As we all know, Xenoblade X is one of the most broken RPGs of all time. You can do some absolutely hilarious amounts of damage in this game and one-shot some of the strongest enemies around, but did you know that the defensive options the game has are just as broken as the offensive options? There exist numerous ways to make yourself effectively invincible or take no damage given the huge variety of tools the game gives you, and these defensive options will usually be the key to making your setups work so you can actually kill the enemies in those singular hits. In this video, I wanted to go through all these different options and setups with you and even show you how you can obtain true invincibility. As always, if you enjoy guide content like this on Xenoblade Chronicles X and want to see more guides and more Xenoblade content in general, please do be sure to subscribe to the channel because it does help me out so much. I'm getting very close to 100,000 subscribers and would really love to hit that milestone soon, and every little bit helps. Let's get started. Perhaps the most famous example of invincibility or strategies that can make yourself nearly invincible in this game is Ghostwalker. This is an art available to the dual gun class, and by just using this art, you grant yourself the buff Decoy, and you also get total evasion while using the art. Decoy is a buff that grants you a certain amount of hits that you are guaranteed to dodge any attack that comes your way. At its maximum rank, this is going to be 8 total hits, making it very powerful. If you have Overdrive active, you can keep 100% uptime on this against most enemies in the game very easily. However, there will be a few enemies that have really strong high multi-hits, and in multi-enemy fights, this will be a bit less useful since you will be getting hit so many times. You may not be able to keep the 100% uptime as easily. But regardless, you can still time Ghostwalker to dodge really strong multi-hits and not have to eat through your decoy effect, since you also get evasion while using the art before your decoy is activated. Ghostwalker is very simple and one of the easiest ways to gain invincibility in this game, or one of the easiest ways not to take any damage in this game, which is why it is a staple on so many sets in the game, and while dual guns have been consistently one of the absolute strongest and best supporting weapons in the entire game to support any kind of melee damage builds to get as much damage as possible. It is absolutely the easiest to use out of every single option here. All you have to do is max your Full Metal Jaguar, and you can use dual guns on any class and take advantage of Ghostwalker to basically take no damage as long as any enemy is targeting you with any kind of attack that can be evaded. Since this is just tied to a singular art, you don't have to modify the rest of your build at all, meaning you can optimize for maximum damage, which is what makes it such a popular option as well. You're going to be able to deal with basically any enemy very easily, since you can focus entirely on damage with all of the rest of your setup, with all of the rest of your skills, because all you need to do is just keep that Ghostwalker active and up, and you are good to go. As long as you activate it on tertiary cooldown, or at least on secondary cooldown every single time, you can always just refresh your Ghostwalker without it ever having to worry about anything, which can be very nice as well. While it isn't necessarily true invincibility, since some enemies can eat through your Ghostwalker, this is the standard for a reason. It is absolutely one of the strongest arts in the entire game, if not the strongest, just for enabling pretty much everything that you ever want to do as far as any kind of actual damage, just by giving you that guaranteed evasion as an effect. However, this is not true invincibility, as once Ghostwalker runs out, you are vulnerable again. There exists another art on the dual guns called Combat Limbo, which can allow you to freeze all of your buffs. Now, this cannot actually freeze Ghostwalker entirely, since once your hit count runs out, it'll make the buff expire no matter what, but for any kind of actual duration-based buff, this works every time to just freeze the duration of your buffs for as long as Combat Limbo effect stasis buff remains active. This can be used to grant yourself true invincibility while also using the dual guns. It's a bit harder to set up rather than just pressing the Ghostwalker button, because you have to be able to get the invincibility buff to begin with. There are a couple ways to do this. The first is being revived. If you can get yourself revived by a party member, you are able to press the Combat Limbo button afterwards and then grant yourself this invincibility buff. Now, the problem with this is going to be the fact that you actually have to get revived, and you're not going to have any TP when you get revived, meaning you can't really take advantage of this in Overdrive. The second way is going to be the more useful way, and the way to really take advantage of this. It's going to be gaining invincibility through soul voices. Now, there are a few different options you can consider choosing, but I think the most useful is going to be the Wrecked Skell soul voice. This will allow you to grant invincibility if you wreck your Skell to whoever answers your soul voice. Now, there are 2 party members that do have this as an effect, Gwen and Hope, meaning if you put them in a very easy-to-kill Skell and have their Skell get destroyed, you are able to use any buff art, in this case you can use Combat Limbo even, to trigger that effect and gain that Invincibility 2 buff. And once you gain that Invincibility and have Combat Limbo freezing it with the Stasis effect, you are able to keep yourself invincible. And as long as you keep reactivating Combat Limbo before it wears off, you're going to be able to keep making yourself invincible using this as its effect. This is true invincibility, meaning no matter what the enemy does, no amount of multi-hits, no special attacks, nothing can get through this and go through your invincibility. You are just straight up invincible to every attack the enemy even tries to do. As you can see, if Gratifus tries to attack me right now, it does not matter. I am invincible to it no matter what. As long as I keep that combat limbo active, it does not matter. The launch effect still goes through if you overlap hitboxes, but outside of that, you are completely invincible and don't have to worry. The launch effect works no matter what you're doing, but that's just how it is. Otherwise, you are 100% completely invincible and cannot take any damage at all. It is very, very powerful, as you might imagine, but it is a bit harder to set up rather than just using Ghostwalker, which is why it usually isn't the preferred method in a lot of situations, since it does require actually activating a soul voice or being revived from an ally to actually get this invincibility effect. But if you can set it up, it's even stronger than Ghostwalker, obviously, which is very, very powerful as an effect to have. It does not matter what enemy you are fighting, this is just as effective no matter what. No matter how strong the attack is, this is definitely the best form of invincibility as far as making yourself completely unhittable no matter what. It is really, really funny to do as well. It does require a little bit of additional setup, but you can be 100% completely invincible, and I think this is kind of where the inspiration for the Xenoblade 3 invincibility strategy came from, since you also use effect stasis on an invincibility buff that can only be obtained with one singular way in that game too. Which is, of course, really funny that we have 2 games you can do that in now. But of course, this is Xenoblade X, this is just kind of a novelty thing, more than being extremely broken, because there's so many other broken strategies in this game. Now, what if you don't want to use the dual guns? What if you don't want to use Ghostwalker or Combat Limbo? Well, have no fear, there exists other strategies in this game that can give yourself near invincibility, also using different weapons. On the Photon Saber, Javelin, and Shield class, there exists these art called Reflect Auras that can reflect certain attacks. On Photon Saber, you can reflect beam attacks, on the Shield you can reflect physical attacks, and on the Javelin you can reflect electric attacks. However, by using certain augment effects, you can add different forms of attribute reflection to these auras, meaning you can actually reflect any type of damage from a specific enemy as long as you want to set yourself up for that. You can even get all 6 attribute types if you really want to, meaning you reflect every single type of damage outside of specific attacks that can nullify your reflection. This, of course, means if you just activate the art a singular time and just keep your aura active, you're going to be able to reflect most types of attacks in the entire game without too much issue at all, even on the strongest super bosses. And this can allow you to very, very easily defeat most enemies in the game just by keeping this reflect aura active. Of course, this means you won't be able to use a different aura, and you might have to use some of your augment slots on this reflection, meaning you may not be as powerful, but other than that, this is very, very strong just for keeping yourself alive and can be very useful to enable a lot of builds without the use of something like dual guns, so you can run a different ranged weapon or use different strategies and weapons in general, which can be very nice at the same time. As you should hopefully be able to see from this, I'm going to be able to reflect basically any type of attack, no matter what is thrown at me. You should be able to see the shield just kind of form around me every time I get attacked, meaning I'm reflecting that type of damage, which is very, very powerful, as you can imagine. Like I said, Reflect can be used with 3 different melee weapon types, giving it a lot more flexibility than just having to run the dual guns no matter what if you want to take advantage of Ghostwalker or Combat Limbo, meaning it does have a lot of usefulness just because of that and can be very, very nice. And you have to run less Reflect augments depending on what you are fighting, since, of course, you only really need to reflect the types of damage that the enemy actually does. So if an enemy doesn't use too many types of damage, you can actually optimize your build further for more damage if you absolutely need to. But regardless, Reflect is another one of the absolute broken strategies that this game has available to it. Perhaps you want even more flexibility in the types of weapons you can run, though, and in that case you might want to look at your attribute resistances. So you can increase all of your attribute resistances, and these act as percentage reductions to all of the stats that you have. And if you know what type of enemy you are fighting, this can be very beneficial to just kind of max out your attribute resistance all the way to 100%, so you only take 1 damage from any type of attack from that attribute, meaning you can make yourself basically invincible against any type of enemy just by taking 1 damage from those types of attacks no matter what. You also have a couple auras and buff arts that can help with this, that can buff your attribute resistance, like Astral Protection boosts all of your attribute resistances by 50, which can be very, very beneficial if you're running these cycle launchers and just kind of buff your attribute resistances above 50 in every single stat, meaning you can actually just, well, make yourself basically invincible by doing this, or nearly invincible. I also have the ability to buff up my lightning resistance with one of my buff arts here, and you're going to be able to see I'm just going to be taking 1 damage from most things that aren't thermal damage, which only has 85% resistance. But still, that is going to be enough to just keep myself alive no matter what this enemy does. This is definitely the type of setup that'll eat into your build the most likely, but it can still be very beneficial as far as just kind of making sure you can deal with any enemy with any type of weapon if you are fighting on foot. This also works for your skells, though. You can buff up your skell attribute resistances with augments as well, meaning you can make your skells basically invincible to the type of damage that you are fighting an enemy with also, meaning it's going to be one of the most consistent and best methods for using skells in combat if you want to try to fight any type of enemy in the entire game. Now, attribute resistances cannot always be all maxed, especially because you have so many augment slots and you can only have so much armor, which can increase your attribute resistances, but it's still really strong and really powerful for not taking much damage at all. These are the main methods you have available to you if you let the enemy actually attack, if you want to try to tank their damage and just make yourself not able to be hit by their damage. But there also exists some methods that you can use that allow the enemy not to attack at all. The first of these is going to be the sleep method, basically putting the enemy asleep and not allowing it to attack. By using 2 skills that you have, Feather Touch and Gentle Approach, you can make it so enemies cannot be woken up with your auto attacks or your skills, or your arts I should say. And in that case, you will be able to just keep attacking the enemy as long as you're by yourself, not using party members that don't have these skills equipped. You're going to keep being able to attack the enemy without too much issue as they just stay asleep the entire time, and you can reapply sleep most of the time without them ever waking up if you use this. This eats into 2 of your skill slots, though, so if you only want to use 1 of your skill slots, you might want to stick with Feather Touch, and just make sure you're attacking fast enough not to accidentally wake the enemy with your auto attacks, which is an option especially. So once you can actually apply sleep, this can actually be very consistent. And of course, now you're going to see now that the sleep is actually applied on Gradivis. I'm just going to be able to auto attack. I'm going to be able to use my arts without Gradivis ever waking up here. And I'm going to be able to reapply sleep if I ever need to, and just keep Gradivis asleep basically the entire fight. Now, the one negative of this is that if you accidentally get a Sleep 4 activation, which you can always get a higher tier debuff activation than what is listed on the debuff art, you're not going to be able to override that with a Sleep 3. And that is, of course, going to be one significant negative here because you have to wait for Gradivis to wake up before you can reapply the sleep, which can be a little bit annoying sometimes. But regardless, this is also a very powerful strategy just for any enemy that is not immune to sleep, just to keep it asleep so you can keep attacking and just not have to worry about the enemy ever really doing anything to you because it never ever gets the chance to attack. Meaning you don't have to worry about your attribute resistances, you don't have to worry about evasion, you don't have to worry about anything. You can just keep the enemy asleep as long as the enemy is not immune to sleep. So this is another pretty powerful option you have available to you just to kind of keep yourself able to attack the enemy. The final major method of not taking any damage in this game is just going to be Topple Locking enemies. This is a fan favorite strategy from the original game, and it returns in this game as well and is just as strong in this game also. Essentially, using something like the assault rifle, shield, or even cycle launchers, you have a topple art which you can keep reapplying to topple lock the enemy, which can be very powerful as an effect. This combines particularly well if you also have a stun art to kind of keep the topple duration going on even longer. And if you have an enemy that is not immune to topple, you can very easily use this thanks to Overdrive granting reduced resistance to all types of debuffs, meaning you can keep applying topple very consistently without the need for a break or stagger as it is called in this game. Meaning you can very easily topple lock pretty much any enemy not immune in this entire game, meaning you can get a lot of benefit out of topple locking. This is one of the go-to strategies for any type of Nemesis runs, just one person kind of topple locking the enemy while everyone else just goes ham with damage. It is very effective and very safe as well, because you always know how long the topple is going to last. You can very easily reapply it whenever because of that. Especially with the long topple skill, which is also very beneficial and also helps enable this strategy very effectively here. Topple locking is very effective to just prevent enemies from ever attacking to begin with, which is of course going to be one of the absolute strongest strategies for, well, not getting hit and making yourself basically invincible in this game, even if you're not truly invincible. But it is very nice as an option to have. It is weak against multiple enemies, of course, but if you are fighting a single enemy and they are not immune to topple, this is absolutely one of the best and strongest strategies in the entire game, especially with the assault rifle, which has very good arts with assault hammer and assault breaker, which is very fast arts that can keep the enemy topple locked very easily. With all of these options available to you, it shouldn't be too terribly difficult to find at least one weapon combination that has some good form of survivability built into it, so you can go ham with the damage. Now, of course, there might be some combinations like, well, longsword sniper rifle or something like that don't really have any of these forms of survivability built into it, so you might have to get more creative with that, or you might have to just buff up your attribute resistances as much as possible depending on what you are fighting to make the weapon combination work. But no matter what, there is going to be a way you can make yourself able to survive in this game if you try your hardest. There is so much customization in this game, and there are so many options available to you that there will definitely be some way you can make any weapon combination in this game work, even the multi-gun if you really, really want to. There is just so many options that no matter what, there will be a way to make it work. And I think that is the beautiful thing about this game, and that is one of my favorite things about Xenoblade Chronicles X. Regardless, I do think that is going to cover it for this video. I do hope you have learned something and learned how to set yourself up so you can survive against any enemy in the entire game should you choose to or should you want to. And if you did, do be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Share with your friends who are new to the game and looking for ways to tackle some of the hardest super bosses and tyrants in the game. And of course, as always, please do look forward to my future guides as well. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for the support. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and hopefully I will see you back here soon for future guides and videos on Xenoblade.